everybody's fascinated with your life. I think all of us know you and all of your work, all your musicals, the Partridge Family, but you're getting into a very candid side of your life that nobody ever knew.
Well, the real side of my life, you know. I mean, when you're a performer, as I have been all my life, and you know, most people just know me from the things I've done, which is wonderful, and I'm very grateful for that, you know, because I've had a great career. But I decided that I'm almost 80 now, and I just figured, you know, this is time for me to really tell the story of what goes on, you know, on the other side. And that's what I did in this book. It's about my career, of course, too, but then I tell about my 2 husbands and my children, and, you know, the life I led with Jack Cassidy and the fact that he was bipolar and had a terrible time. So there's a lot of that in there, too.
Well, and I think, you know, most of the headlines that have been coming out of this are, you know, the sexual exploration of Shirley Jones.
Yes,
and,
yes.
You know, why did you feel so confident being so candid about that side of your life? Because I would never talk about these things.
I know. Well, you know why? Because I had to tell, you know, Jack Cassidy was the love of my life, and he really was. I mean, and I was a very young, naive little girl from a small town. And I just felt that I had, if I was going to talk about, everybody knows me as Mrs. Partridge, everybody knows me as Marion the librarian, Laurie in Oklahoma, and all of those things. I want them to know I'm a real person, you know, and the real experience I had was with Jack. Because Jack was, you know, a ladies' man. Jack was extremely talented. Jack was... you know, we worked together, did several shows together all over the country, father of my 3 sons and David Cassidy, my stepson. So I wanted them to know that my life with Jack was truly an incredible experience in every way, because he taught me everything. He taught me everything about food, everything about drinking my first martini, everything about sex, as you'll read in the book. I didn't know anything. I was a virgin when I married Jack. So a lot of it is telling the story of my life with him, and then, of course, with Marty, too. I'm married 35 years to Marty. And I'm a very loyal wife, and I wanted to please Jack in every way I could, because I was the breadwinner. I was the movie star, and he felt very beneath me, you know, and so I did everything I could to try and please him in every way.
Well, and you know, some of the stories that you tell really do kind of sound like they come from some big Hollywood crazy movie.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, you tell one story about you know, hanging out with Joan Collins and her husband, and you know, after dinner we decide to do what?
Yeah, well, I didn't do it. As you read it,
right?
We had a lovely dinner with them and everything, and they said, okay, we're going to show some pornographic movies, and we'll take our clothes off and watch. And I looked at Jack and I said, not me. It's the only time I think I said no. And he was very sweet. He said no. He said, thank you so much. He said, but my wife just doesn't really feel like this. So I turned several things I did turn down, but most of the time I did what he wanted me to do. So, you know. So.
Well, and you mentioned that you were a virgin when you married Jack, and you know, and I think the stories that you tell are really, you know, I said the sexual exploration. Now, I don't think in a seedy way at all. I mean,
not at all.
This is the love that you had for your husband.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It was the love I had for him, and as I said, you know, I was always the one that everybody talked to. I was always, because I was the movie star. And Jack was extremely talented in every way. But he was a ladies' man, too. And he was married when I met him, you know, the mother of David. But, you know, we were in Paris. We were doing Oklahoma on the stage over there. And he was my leading man. That's how we met. And he took me out for my first martini and some escargot, you know, in Paris, and brought me back to my little hotel where I had a roommate, and was stopped at the door, and he kissed me on the cheek and he said, I'm going to marry you. I said, but you're married. He said, I know, but I'm going to marry you. Wow. Never did I believe him, because everybody said, Shirley, don't listen to him. You know, he's a ladies' man. So, well, I went back to do Carousel, and I was up in Booth Bay Harbor, and this was 3 or 4 weeks later, and he called me and he said, I'm divorced, Shirley.
Wow.
And so that kind of thing started. It was the love of my life, you know. Yeah. My first love, and real love, and I thought, wow, this is, you know, he loves me, I love him, and I wanted to learn. He taught me about food, he taught me about living, he taught me about everything.
Well, and you do talk in the book, you know, as the marriage goes on over the years, there were some infidelities from Jack.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and you know, looking back now, do you see maybe the cause of that being his being bipolar?
He was bipolar,
yeah.
Absolutely.
But you didn't know that at the time.
No, I didn't. You know, I knew that he was, you know, gregarious and strange at times, but you know, but never, you know, he was never an angry guy. Never did any of that. I mean, he was very sweet to me, very loving to me all the time, and but I discovered a little later on when he was, he really just went insane, really. I mean, it was just horrible. I had to have him call and put him in a straitjacket to get him out of the house, when we came back from Las Vegas. We were doing a show called The Marriage Band, and we had singers and dancers, and we each had, we sang together, we sang separately. It was a huge show. We played the MGM Grand twice in Vegas and then all over the country. And during our second time playing up there, I suddenly went in and I said, "Come on, Jack, it's time to get ready." And he was sitting in the corner naked. And he said, "No, I'm not going on." I didn't know what to do, and he wouldn't let me in the room. And then I realized, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Something's the matter here. I called home, and my business manager sent an airplane up. My son Sean was in the plane. He was my oldest. He was 16 then. And they came up, and they got Jack out of the room, put him on an airplane, and took him home. And I had to complete the show by myself. And this was a 2-character show. I did one side of the stage, I played him. The other side, I played myself.
Oh, my gosh.
And finished the show.
Well, and the marriage did come to an end. You and Jack did separate and divorce, and years later, Jack did tragically pass away.
Yes, it was terrible, just terrible. And that was, when we were up in New England doing our show, and he went out. I was unpacking, and he went out and came back, and he said, I just talked to my mother on a corner. Now, she'd been dead for 10 years. I said, "What are you saying, Jack?" He said, "My mother said you better stop smoking. It's going to kill you."
Oh my gosh!
And it did kill him. It was a cigarette.
It was a cigarette.
In the couch.
If people don't know, Jack fell asleep.
Exploded.
With a cigarette and perished in a fire.
Right.
How did you move on after that and find Marty? Because you had such a tumultuous end to your marriage.
Right.
You had to be a little shy, kind of getting back out there.
Very much so. But I knew Marty. When Jack died, I was with Marty. I was dating Marty, and because we had been separated, and Jack was the one that wanted a divorce, not me. But he wanted a divorce because he said, "I don't want to hurt you anymore. I want you to divorce me." I probably, had Jack not died the way he had, I probably never would have married again. I mean, that's what I felt about him. But I was divorced, and I was dating Marty then. We'd been dating for, probably about a year, maybe a little less at that time. And then, after Jack died, that was when I, suddenly realized, this is quite a guy, Marty is. I probably never would have known that or thought about it if Jack were still living, But then, now Marty's the love of my life, 35 years. I've never not been married, 18 years to Jack, 35 years to Marty, and 2 crazy men.
You're a very dedicated woman. That's what it is.
I think so. I said, I must be the crazy one.
Well, and you talk about, you and Marty are still very active today. I mean, I remember there was a quote that, you are very excited to let people know that you can still be very active and very healthy and very happy at 79 years old.
Yes, I am. Very, And he makes me laugh 24 hours a day, so it's fun.
That's great. Well, and you've had such an amazing career. When you think about the career of Shirley Jones, being in some of the greatest musicals of all time, being an Academy Award winner, being this television icon that you are today, is there one thing that you're more proud of than anything else?
Well, I have to say winning the Academy Award was wonderful. I mean, because that changed the course of my career, Being a singer and done all those wonderful musicals was wonderful. But if you were a singer, they never thought of you as an actress for some reason. And I knew that I had to prove myself as an actress or I wasn't going to have a career because they stopped making musicals, Right. So that's when I went into television, and I did Playhouse 90 and Lux Video Theater, the live television stuff that started then. And I did a Playhouse 90 with Red Skelton called The Big Slide, and Burt Lancaster saw that show. And he, at that time, was in the middle of producing with Richard Brooks Elmer Gantry and starring in it himself. And he saw that performance that I did on, and I had an Emmy nomination for it. And I was up in San Francisco doing a nightclub act with Jack, and I get this telephone call. He said, "Hello, is this Shirley Jones?" I said, "Yes." He said, "This is Burt Lancaster." I said, "Sure it is," and I hung up.
Wow! And he knew to call back.
And he called back,
Yes,
thank heaven.
did.
I know. He called back. This is Burt Lancaster. Oh, I said, "I'm sorry."
Well, and it was kind of a controversial role for you at the time. Playing in Elmer Gantry. I mean, you actually had some feedback from your fans that weren't very happy.
Oh yeah, feedback from the fans, and some of the churches banned the movie, in their towns and so forth, because the dialogue was very it said everything for that time. It was really something. But I was thrilled because, Richard Brooks, who was the writer-director, didn't want me for the film. He wanted somebody else. No. So,
well, he was an idiot. Who did he want?
Well, he wanted Piper Laurie.
Really?
The actress Piper Laurie. She was wonderful. But Burt wanted me, and Burt fought for me. And he was co-producing, and he fought for me, and I got the role because of Burt. But the terrible thing is the very first day, Richard Brooks shot in sequence. He shot the way and I didn't come into the film to sort of the middle of the film, if you recall. And Burt said, come to the set every day, watch his work, watch the other actors, listen to the dialogue, which I did. And my first scene was the famous scene in the House of Prostitution, where I tell the ladies how I met, him, and they rammed the fear of God into me so hard and so fast I never heard my old man's footsteps. Now that line, made history, But I never got one direction from Brooks. He sat in his chair, smoked his pipe, and never said a word to me. I went home that night and I was in tears, and I said to Jack, he's going to fire me. He doesn't want me. And the next day I didn't have to work, and he saw my work, what I did before, the day before, and he called me, Brooks. He said, Shirley, this is Richard Brooks, and I owe you an apology. He said, not only are you going to be great in this film, but I predict you're going to win an Academy Award.
Oh, wow.
And I went on to do another film with him.
That's fantastic. Well, and the way that you kind of got into musicals is almost this Hollywood fairy tale in a way. There's a young lady here in D.C. Whose father is Ed Fultz, who you might remember from back home. And he said that he sang in the choir with you.
Really?
And his comment was, you didn't necessarily sing in the choir, you sang along with Shirley.